Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to structure this video in a little bit of a different way, where at the beginning, I'm going to talk about some players that have lost a lot of value that maybe it's time to go through and cut. We're going to be trying to determine if they are worth roster spots at all. And then later on, we're going to be talking about players that, hell, have a lot of value still, but maybe we should go through and maybe we should look to sell them off our rosters, because I know we have a lot of questions about someone like Christian McCaffrey maybe looking like a committee running back in San Francisco. But before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. If you have any questions, feel free to go down there and drop them in that comment section. I'll try to answer as many of those as I possibly can. And in that comment section, you can also find a link to Underdog Fantasy. When you go and sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Available in damn near every state. You can find the link in the live chat. Find it in the description, comment section. And my favorite prop is going to be the Jalen Hurts less than 30.5 passing attempts for Monday night. But I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into Brandin Cooks back with the Houston Texans. Now, I mean, I wasn't a big advocate for Brandin Cooks ever. I don't think we need to talk about that. With Brandin Cooks, the issue I don't like him, the issue I really don't like anybody here is it's the Houston Texans. Despite whatever your favorite fantasy analyst told you about Davis Mills, he's not good, okay? He's not the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. He's not good. It's a horrendous offense. And Davis Mills this week had one of the best weeks of his entire NFL career. Davis Mills goes through, has 319 passing yards. Whoop-de-doo, that's phenomenal. And with Brandin Cooks, if we go back to see what he's historically had in Houston, hell, if he's getting to his 25% team target share, and you have over 300 passing yards in the offense, then hell yes, Brandin Cooks is very exciting if that happens. However, it doesn't look like that's the case. You actually have a potential 64 snaps played here for Brandin Cooks, where in years past, he would have been playing 60 of those. He would have been an every down player. 41. He played 41 snaps. Nico Collins played more snaps. Brandin Cooks and Chris Moore both ran 26 routes compared to Nico Collins at 33. There were 41 potential routes run in this offense. Brandin Cooks only had 26 of them. You cannot be a part-time player in a horrendous offense. If you were in a best ball format, then sure, maybe Brandin Cooks can still get there. Maybe you have some random spike week. But if it's a traditional redraft league, I will never feel comfortable putting him on my starting lineup, even if he could have a random spike, where I would much prefer just dropping him and picking up a waiver wire option that we previously discussed this morning. Now, going over to what we have with the Kansas City Chiefs backfield, Clyde Edwards-Helaire not involved at all. Clyde Edwards-Helaire going back to week 4, 19 carries against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everybody losing their mind with this primetime game where the final score 41-31. But since then, you go from 19 carries to 9 to 9 to 6 to 4. In this past week, he was benched entirely in Kansas City. 0 carries. I don't think it's some mysterious injury that he's going to be back next week. Don't worry. No, this is a continued trend. You've seen the usage trending downwards where, nope, it doesn't look like it's some mysterious injury. It's just the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, probably are accurately looking at their backfield saying, okay, Isaiah Pacheco, you can be the first, second down guy. Jarrett McKinnon, you're the third down option. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just worth cutting. I mean, there's no reason to have him on your roster. Now, going over to another player that is seeing his role diminish, Raheem Mostert is still someone that we probably need to be holding for the time being. I wanted to overreact with the lessons learned video and say to maybe go through and drop him. If we can still pick up someone like Alexander Mattison off the waiver wire, yes, I'm going to drop Raheem Mostert, because you have to understand, he's completely transitioned his role here. He is now just a backup running back in Miami. He is now just a handcuff in case Jeff Wilson Jr. were to go down. I mean, this past week, you had a potential 69 snaps played in Miami, so call it 70. Raheem Mostert played 19 of those. He played 19. I mean, this is a running back that's not a phenomenal pass catcher. I mean, this week in particular, he sees 4 targets, has 4 receptions. That's great, but that's not historically what you've had with his role. I mean, he's 30 years old. I don't think he's changing himself all of a sudden. I don't think he's developing some new part of his game as a 30-year-old running back. You have Jeff Wilson Jr., 17 carries, 119 rushing yards. I know Raheem Mostert has a fine day from a fantasy football point scored perspective where, yeah, I mean, he goes out there and he comes away in a PPR format with 19, almost 20 fantasy points. Even with the points being there, like, please dramatically lower your expectations with Mostert. I think he's just a handcuffed running back at this point that does have a small role on a week-to-week basis. Like, if we were going to be looking at someone like Alexander Mattison, I honestly think I'd rather have him on my bench because if Jeff Wilson Jr. were to go down, Mostert probably a high-end RB2. Whereas if Dalvin Cook were to go down, Alexander Mattison, a top 3 guy. I'm not too excited about starting either player outside of an injury. Now, going over to our next situation, Los Angeles Rams. I mean, super brief. Don't roster anybody here. I had a million questions regarding Kyren Williams coming into the week. Every single time we'd say, don't roster Kyren Williams, drop Kyren Williams. For the love of God, don't start Kyren Williams. He's small, he's slow, has no draft capital, coming off high ankle sprain. What are we talking about? This week, you get a 3-man running back by committee in Los Angeles. Darrell Henderson gets 35 snaps compared to Kyren Williams at 16, compared to Cam Akers at 10. Cam Akers sees 6 carries. Darrell Henderson sees 6 as well. Kyren Williams only has 1. I don't think I want to roster any running back in this backfield, if I'm going to be honest with you, because I even thought Darrell Henderson may have been intriguing 2-3 weeks ago. I actually kind of liked him here if we had no Cam Akers in this offense. But what we saw is even if you have Cam Akers going down with an injury, even if you have Kyren Williams going down with an injury, they're still going to turn this into a 3-man running back by committee. They're going to grab no-name guys off the street like Ronnie Rivers, players I've never even freaking heard of. And they're going to be competing with Darrell Henderson. So no running back in Los Angeles is worth the raw spot. Maybe Anderson is. I'm not excited about any of these guys. But instead of talking about players that we could potentially go through and cut off our roster, let's bump it up a bit with some players that actually have some real value. Allen Lazard went from a player that I didn't like coming into the season, then someone I was in on once we had the Romeo Doubs, Randall Cobb injuries. But now, I don't know. I think we need to be worried. Christian Watson coming in. Now, full transparency, I made a massive bet when Allen Lazard was going in the 6th round of fantasy drafts this year, and you were getting Christian Watson in the double-digit rounds in best ball leagues. I made a massive bet on Christian Watson. So I am very, very biased when it comes to this. Full transparency. But I'm trying to leave my bias at the door, and that's why I liked Allen Lazard coming into the week, because I didn't think Christian Watson was going to pan out. Thank God it's happening. But if we're being realistic now, Christian Watson looks like he's maybe the wide receiver 1 here. He was a significantly better prospect than Allen Lazard. I know Lazard's much older. Lazard was an undrafted free agent. He's never really proved much at the NFL level. He's a better prospect than Romeo Doubs. They drafted Christian Watson. They traded up to draft Christian Watson at the very beginning of the 2nd round of this year's NFL draft. His first game here that he gets a real shot, that he's actually healthy, he has 8 targets out of 20 potential targets from Aaron Rodgers. He has 45% of the targets in this offense. The only way you could start Allen Lazard, in my opinion, is if there was nobody else he was competing for targets with. If he was going to get every single target here, if he was the guy with 8 targets, not Christian Watson, then Allen Lazard could be appealing. But I want to say Lazard's the 2nd, 3rd best receiver. I think he's going to be maybe fighting it out with Romeo Doubs when Doubs is back in from the high ankle sprain for the wide receiver 2 spot here. Please, I would love to know your opinion in the comment section. I know I'm stupid. I know it's hard for me to leave my biases at the door. Do you think we're getting too excited with Christian Watson? Trust me, if he only had, say, 4 or 5 targets and it was 4 receptions, 3 receiving touchdowns, I would say it was a fluke. I'm not even really focusing too much in on the receiving touchdowns or the 100 yards. I'm more so just looking at the fact that he had 45% of the team's targets. And if Lazard's not going to get that target volume, hell, I don't mind if you wanted to move off of Allen Lazard. I hate saying that because I was willing to buy in this past week. But going over to Atlanta, Cordarrelle Patterson, I'm rooting for him. Trust me, I am. But it's a 4-man running back by committee. Cordarrelle Patterson plays in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. He is 31 years old. You have Tyler Algier, 30 snaps. Cordarrelle Patterson, 24. Avery Williams, 9. Caleb Huntley, 9. Cordarrelle Patterson sees 5 carries, 18 rushing yards this past week. I mean, you can be an effective running back in a horrendous offense, but what you need is every touch out of the backfield. Maybe not even every touch. You need at least 75% of the touches out of the backfield if you're going to be playing in an offense that's as bad as the Atlanta Falcons. So I think you 100% should be worried about Cordarrelle Patterson. It's going to be damn near impossible to rank him as a top 24 running back going forward until we see something change, until they remove some of these running backs from the rotation. I don't see how they scaled his role back, where he looked so good the first week back from the knee injury 2 weeks ago. Now going over to our next guy, DeAndre Swift, super brief, just an update. Swift, I still think he has rest of season upside, but you can't play him right now. Okay, he comes out, gives you nothing. He gives you 19 snaps compared to Justin Jackson at 17. Jamal Williams still the running back 1. I mean, he gets you a rushing touchdown, so if you started him, you're kind of okay with it. But at the end of the day, for the love of God, please do not be playing DeAndre Swift anytime soon. Going over to Amari Cooper. This is a wide receiver that I think is the perfect guy to take advantage of your league mates with. If your league mates are worried about Amari Cooper, where he's been wildly inconsistent this past week, he has 3 receptions and 3 targets. If we can go through and buy Amari on the low, 100% I want to. 100% I'm buying into him. Because if we go back and look at what we've had this entire season for Amari Cooper, let's run through this. We're going to look at the away games here. Here are the receptions that you have in the away games for Amari Cooper. 3, 1, 3, 3. Here are the receptions we have for Amari Cooper at home. 9, 7, 7, 4, 5. If we break it down by yards, I mean, at home, you have 101, 76, 44, 131. Away, 17, 9, 74, 32. He has only scored touchdowns at home. He has a whopping 5 touchdowns at home, 0 touchdowns away. This is who Amari Cooper is. I don't have an explanation behind it. I wish at some point of my life I had experience as a professional athlete. Sadly, I mean, I know I'm going to blow you away by saying this. Someone sitting here spending his entire day talking about fantasy football. I sadly don't have experience as a professional athlete, so I don't know what the explanation behind this would possibly be. But Amari Cooper should be fine in home games going forward. And if we get Watson coming back in, maybe he can elevate him in away games as well. So don't worry too much when it comes to Amari Cooper. You still should be fine. Now, going over to the last guy, we had so many people in the Premier chat. So many people asking, what's wrong with CMC? What's wrong with CMC? Or should we sell CMC? And I understand why. Christian McCaffrey, 14 carries to Elijah Mitchell's 18 carries. Christian McCaffrey, a total of 18 touches compared to Elijah Mitchell's total of 19 touches this week. Elijah Mitchell has more yards. I mean, this is looking like a running back by committee in San Francisco. I did not expect this in the slightest. This came out of left field. I thought Elijah Mitchell would be a premium handcuff running back like Dalvin Cook. Did not expect him to have this kind of role. And I will say, I think Elijah Mitchell is here to stay. I think Elijah Mitchell is going to continue to get touches in San Francisco. And for that reason, Christian McCaffrey can no longer be compared to players like Austin Eckler, like Saquon Barkley. I think you are going to have to drop him down a tier. Now, in terms of panicking on Christian McCaffrey, I also want to be very realistic. With CMC, the majority of this value is derived as what he can do as a pass catcher. We see Austin Eckler being the running back 1 in fantasy and not needing every single touch out of the backfield. I mean, hell, on top of this, if we look at the underlying snaps for the running backs, you have 47 snaps for CMC. You have 24 snaps for Elijah Mitchell. So I think you're in a spot where the split's not going to be this dramatic going forward. I think it maybe goes closer to being a 60-40, 70-30, probably maybe 65-35, about 70-30 in favor of Christian McCaffrey, but in a full PPR format when he's still going to get involved as a pass catcher, while we can no longer assume that he is Going to be the running back 1 overall, going to be a top 3 guy locked and loaded. Maybe we have to drop him down to tier 2. He's still a running back 1 in fantasy. Please don't go out there and panic and start selling Christian McCaffrey for Kenneth Walker, even if I like Kenneth Walker. But I think that's all I got for you. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, please go down there and drop a like. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down there in the comment section. And in that comment section, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy where you can check out all these player props. And you sign up for Underdog with promo code FLOCK. They're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Link in the comment section, link in the description, available in damn near every state. And I mean, if I was going to pick a line for Monday night, I'd be looking at the fewer than 30.5 passing attempts for Jalen Hurts. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.